And I'll start by asking you this question here. Are we all being played with this Pentagon document leak story? Just let that set in for a second. Are we all being played by this story? I'll give you my hunch on this in a moment. But first, it's time for your U.S. War Roundup. These are sort of a check-in on a bunch of the places the United States is currently provoking war around the world. Remember, the real story isn't Russia. It never was. The real story is China. So let's all remember that as we head into this news block and this news update. Always remember it's China. That's the biggest enemy. That's where the United States is putting all of its attention. They use other proxy wars, all driving our attention towards China. That's the main point of all of this. That's our main enemy number one. So it is interesting that the United States is starting to admit publicly now that all of those sanctions against Russia might not actually be working. They might actually be failing. And the Treasury Secretary, Janet Yellen, who came out in this interview, and it's now reverberating kind of around the world, what she said, and here's a Barron's quote about it, that sanctions may risk U.S. hegemony of the U.S. dollar.
That's not the purpose.
Right. Like, wasn't the purpose really to undermine Russia? It was to undermine Russia. They were going to become crawling back on their hands and knees. They were going to become impoverished, right? Their GDP would crumble. The ruble would crumble.
And they would feel so hand-tied that they would retreat from
Right. That
Ukraine.
was the idea, right? That's the whole idea.
Not only that, but the average citizen would rise up and overthrow the government that we don't like. That's the other side of the sanction coin.
Yeah, exactly. Very good point. Yeah, they'd overthrow Putin, right? So there'd be an Arab Spring, right, in St. Petersburg, right? That's what would happen. So that didn't happen. In fact, the U.S. dollar has been suffering tremendously as a result of that. And U.S. power, we've been highlighting this now for many months, how U.S. sanctions in Russia, Western sanctions, are crushing the U.S. dollar. In fact, it's leading to a pullback from Western hegemony, the U.S. hegemony as the world's reserve currency. So Janet Yellen was asked about this on Sunday with Fareed Zakaria, and he asked a very pointed question about U.S. dollar power and what this means. And I think the reason that she answers this question sort of honestly is that I think she's putting out the little nuggets here that, hey, yeah, maybe things aren't going as well in Russia as we thought, in Ukraine. So maybe it's time we really need to really just start focusing our attention on China. I think that's perhaps why she says this. Watch.
I asked you about one of the costs or one of the prices of these sanctions. The way that the United States has used sanctions often, in this case, in the case of the Iran nuclear deal, is to use the power of the dollar as the reserve currency of the world. But that weaponization of the dollar has produced a reaction. This week, President Lula in Brazil said, why are we all being forced to use the dollar? Emmanuel Macron made reference to the dollar in that same way. The European Commission has talked about, after Trump pulled out of the Iran sanctions, talked about creating an alternative to SWIFT, to the American-dominated payment system. Is there a danger that we will look back at all this, these measures and say this was the moment that the dollar's hegemony and its status as reserve currency began to falter?
So there is a risk when we use financial sanctions that are linked to the role of the dollar, that over time it could undermine the hegemony of the dollar, as you said. But this is an extremely important tool we try to use judiciously and in circumstances, especially when we have the support of our allies. It's not just the United States. It's a coalition of partners acting together to impose these sanctions. So it is a very effective tool. Of course, it does create a desire on the part of China, of Russia, of Iran to find an alternative. But the dollar is used as a global currency for reasons that are not easy for other countries to find an alternative with the same properties.
But they are, aren't they?
Oh, we talked about why about 2 weeks ago when
Right.
we talked about the history of that hegemony and how it was obtained through foul play. So, yeah, other countries don't know how to do that. They don't know how to play that game.
So it's funny because that's why something smells very, very fishy to me about these Pentagon document leaks. And it's all sort of tied together here. Because, again, we're hearing about this now. She's telling us this. And I think in many ways, these Pentagon, it's giving it cover to something here. Are being played like a fiddle? Like it's our job on this show to call out these things when I feel like we're being played. So I'm just going to kind of put these theories out there and you make your own determination about it. But the Pentagon, kind of in the same 24-hour period, then comes out and says, we simply don't know how many documents were leaked. We really don't have a handle on this at all. And these things are going to be leaking now for days and weeks. And we know more is coming, they're telling us now. This is Pentagon spokesperson, Department of Defense spokesperson, Sabrina Singh. And she said in this headline, Pentagon doesn't know how many documents were leaked. U.S. Department of Defense is still trying to understand the scope and scale of the document leaks. And we're going to continue to find documents, she says. And we just really don't know. But yeah, they're going to keep coming, guys. But we really caution you, don't report these. We want to reiterate what John Kirby said the other day. Don't put these things in the newspaper. Don't put these things on television. You guys, don't do it. It's like parents telling kids, there's a candy closet that we have. You're not allowed to go in there.
Do you get the feeling that the United States is not organized after all the classified documents showing up at presidential homes and now leaks of documents from the Pentagon? It just really feels to me like the screws are not tight.
Well, so maybe it is that sieve and you see it that way. I'm just saying, I really feel like now that this is all part of a plan, that this is planted. But let's let Sabrina Singh, explain why she starts off her press conference addressing this and how there's more documents coming, basically, and answers questions about it.
At this point, does the Pentagon have a better sense of just how many documents were leaked and the larger scope? It seems like documents continue to surface in different media reports. Do you have a better sense of how wide the damage was?
Well, two things. First, I'll say that this is an ongoing investigation being led by the Department of Justice. So we are consulting with them on an ongoing basis, but that investigation will reveal more documents that have been previously posted. And again, we're doing our own internal review assessment. As I said at the top, this is being led by our Intelligence and Security Department to get a better assessment of what documents were disclosed and where they surfaced online.
Okay. So, we just aren't really sure. It's going to keep coming. We're not really sure, but we're assessing all of this right now. It's an internal investigation. And so you immediately we immediately got the guy, though, 21-year-old guy. He's a 21-year-old airman who puts these documents on a Discord server. Like, okay, we got the guy. We got cameras there. We're all over it. It's all over in the newspapers, and we're all over it, right? So then I don't know. This whole thing smells weird to me. Do you not agree? Do you guys have? Am I just the only one here? I just feel like that this is all.
You're not telling us where you're going. You keep baiting. I'm going to tell you my theory, and now we are how many minutes into the show? So can you just say it?
Well, that is my theory, that this is all planted. I just said it was planted.
Why?
Why? Because they're all putting it out there to drive us towards China. They're dropping these documents out there so that they can show us things we already know. Troops are in Ukraine. Yes, we already knew that. But now we have confirmation that U.S. forces are in Ukraine. Okay, so we know that's what these documents show us. Things are not going well for our for Ukraine. Things are bad in Ukraine.
So it's like,
but China is the threat. Because here, look at this. This is another thing, part of these documents. Look at this. This is exactly why. So here, China agreed to secretly arm Russia, leaked Pentagon documents reveal. But wait a second. The Department of Defense said that they have no evidence of that. So the leaked documents tell us that, wait, in fact, this is exactly what they were warning us about. This was the red line that the Biden administration warned us about that could push us towards war with China, that if they are arming Russia, that's it. Game over. Oh, that's what the documents show us?
But China this week said we actually are not going to arm Russia.
They've been saying that all along.
This all along. We have always known that this was a big game talk from the United States. So it doesn't matter if the Pentagon says it or John Kirby says it or the State Department says it. It really does not matter who says it. If you're paying attention, you know that it's always been a red herring by the United States. So it doesn't change the game. I guess what I'm asking is, are you saying that the United States is giving itself an excuse to give up on Ukraine and then go balls to the wall?
Going
balls to the wall.
Balls deep in China.
Balls to the wall. Okay.
Well, and I always, if they're doing like, you got to understand, like, anytime that they are out in public, it is highly planned. They know exactly what they're doing. So anytime they're having interviews, anytime they're talking about anything, you have to know that that's the narrative that they're trying. So you have to look outside of that to be like, okay, what are they really doing? And it's hard to find. Like, you have to like work your way out around the fringe and work your way back in to figure out what in the hell are they actually doing by saying what they're saying here.
Right, because when John Kirby came out, right? So John Kirby came out in that press conference and he says, and this was set off alarm bells for me. This was the first moment when I was like, wait a second. There was a couple of moments like this, but this was a big one for me because normally they deny anything. They won't talk about it. If they're really, first of all, like the Nord Stream pipeline stuff, right? They are hiding it, obfuscating, won't talk about the Seymour Hersh stuff. They, all of that stuff. But when you have a direct confrontation like this and you tell that reporters don't cover this stuff, don't put it in the papers, and you get this statement, watch John Kirby.
Again, without confirming the validity of the documents, this is information that has no business in the public domain. It has no business, if you don't mind me saying, on the pages of front pages of newspapers or on television. It is not intended for public consumption, and it should not be out there.
So you think it's a don't throw me into that briar patch type thing, like Brer Rabbit, the like, I don't want to go there, but you really want to go there. I still have the flu, so you got to help me out here a little bit. Like, like I don't want to, they want you to look, but by saying not to look.
Yes, exactly. It's like, it's my candy it's the closet candy analogy that I just made. Hey kids, mommy and daddy just built an entire closet that's devoted to Reese's peanut butter cups and peanut M&Ms. Do not go in there. Okay, we're going to the movies. We'll be back tonight at 10 o'clock. You guys put yourselves to bed.
Yeah.
Like, he's telling you exactly what to do. We want you to publish these things.
So it'd be pretty clever because at this point, most of us know that everything they say is a lie. So if they plant their lies under, as a
exactly.
Okay, I get
now
what
you're getting it because and now you're one step ahead because that's what I'm thinking here is everything that comes out of John Kirby's mouth is a lie. We know this. It's verifiable. This U.S. State Department and these clowns at the Pentagon have been lying to us over and over and over again. And so now they're telling us the truth about these documents. They're telling us, we're not going to verify them, but we are kind of verifying them, but we don't want you to report on them. But what the documents show us is exactly what they want us to hear, which is focus on China. David, go ahead.
But you're calling them lies, but they're more like bluffs because it's like a poker hand. They know their hand, and they're going to try to make us think they don't have that hand. So they're bluffing more than lying because like the lies are verifiably false, right? But like the bluffing is harder.
Yeah, and it's almost like like a hashtag. Like leakers are really popular these days. People like them. Let's put some news behind that. It's the new hashtag.
It also gives the added benefit of making it look like the media is doing their job. Because, you got to stop publishing this stuff. You got to stop asking these tough questions of us. It gives that false narrative that the media is actually like policing the government, which we know they're not.
Except they haven't been. That's the thing, is that they acted, upset about this news coming out through unofficial channels. Right. Yeah.
We're upset about this. So the Taiwan news reported last night in your war roundup that more U.S. forces have arrived in Taiwan, like right on schedule. Hey, perfect. With this document dump, that suddenly China could overwhelm Taiwan in no time. New U.S. military trainers have arrived in Taiwan to basically curb what they see as increases in Indo-Pacific Command dispatches from China, and how to sort of counter what the Chinese, the PLA, is doing in this region. So we're going to send trainers to do that, even though the documents showed us that Taiwan would be overwhelmed within like minutes, basically, if China wanted to invade their own territory, which is Taiwan. So again, the documents show us how weak, I guess, Taiwan is. And so we need to send more forces there because of the Chinese threat. So again, it all comes back to the documents supporting more of a proxy war against China. This is all part of the plan.
Isn't it crazy that they turn it around and they use this language intentionally? They're trainers. They're not boots on the ground, because if they say boots on the ground, we're going to be like, no, we don't want boots on the ground over there, but we're putting trainers. We're sending special ops, things that are, outside of the military purview, that it's not boots on the ground.
Well, they don't even call them special ops. You're even giving them more credit.
And they don't even wear boots.
Right. No, trainers is what they'll call them. They'll call them like coordinators. Like, we're just sending Joyce the coordinator. She's the happy coordinator. Oh, really? No. These are special forces. These are actual troops. These are not just coordinators and trainers. There's thousands already there in Taiwan, as we've been reporting for 2 years on this show. So here is how the Department of Defense describes what the document showed us about Ukraine. Here's what Sabrina Singh had to say about boots on the ground in Ukraine, how they describe them.
And finally, I also want to take a moment to address something we've seen in press reports that warrant us relaying the facts. With regard to the U.S. military presence in Ukraine, we've publicly acknowledged previously that there is a small U.S. military footprint in Ukraine to provide mission-critical support to the U.S. Embassy. To be clear, there are no U.S. combat troops conducting combat operations in Ukraine. And while we're not going to go into the specific disposition of our forces for OPSEC reasons, their duties include support to the Defense Attaché Office in support of our security assistance programs and end-use monitoring, as well as U.S. Embassy security support. This is not new, and again, something we've been transparent about and publicly with Congress as well.
I like, let me see who said that in our chat here. Let me just scroll back if I can. It goes by so fast. Hermie Elf in our YouTube chat tonight says, they're safety enhancers. They're not troops. They're safety enhancers. That's right. Safety enhancers. So I love
the volunteers.
The volunteers. I love what she says here, though. Oh, they're only there to help the embassy. They're just there to help the embassy staff. Right.
They have a lot of visas to process.
Let me ask you this. So do we have Russian troops at the Russian embassy protecting their people here? Do we have, troops from other militaries that's protecting their embassies in our country? Is that just what we do now?
That's all we do. No, that's not at all what we do. These are not people just protecting the embassy, like making sure that everyone has Keurig cups refilled in the commissary. Like that's not what they're doing. That's not why they're there.
You sure?
I just feel like that they would have a Keurig machine. Awful coffee in one of those places.
It's Nespresso. It's got to be.
No, Nespresso is really good, but yeah.
And Joyce needs to walk to her car every evening. So
right, so they got to take care of her. And then I'll kind of get you out here on this story about Ukraine and your little war roundup here. These are just some of the proxy wars the United States is involved in. So Matt Gaetz has introduced a new bill in Congress that would force President Biden to disclose military involvement in Ukraine. It's a nice idea, but as we wrote in the newsletter this morning, it probably won't pass. Probably has no chance of passing. It's called the Privileged Resolution of Inquiry. It was introduced by Gaetz, and it's an idea basically to say, hey, we know that there are forces there according to these documents, but we as members of Congress need to authorize this if they're going into a war zone. Why is this even a bill in the first place? Like the fact that we have U.S. forces in these proxy war zones without congressional approval should be illegal. Like why do we then have to add another layer of a bill on top of it? Oh, it's because the executive branch has just given them unlimited war powers for the last 25 years that never sunset. And they just continue and they keep renewing them. They keep renewing them. They keep renewing them.
Right.
So,
well, then unfortunately, the people proposing the bills or supporting those bills are always the fringe. They're the ones that are out here on the fringe, and the middle all support the war. So the bill's not going to go anywhere, and we already know that.
No, and because Matt Gaetz is a polarizing figure, it gives, the left, the liberal left that was once anti-war, an excuse to say, well, he's crazy. He's just putting up stuff to make himself seem less crazy. We're not even going to listen to him. And so, you recall that Congress didn't show any interest in tracking the monetary aid that Rand Paul introduced into the $40 billion aid package. He tried to stall it and then eventually just capitulated. No one wants to count dollars, and no one wants to count lives either.
right. Yeah, exactly. So we don't care how much money is being spent in Ukraine. We don't care how much money has gone into the pockets of corrupt people, how much money is lost and disappeared altogether. And we voted to not have an audit mechanism in place. And we probably don't care how many American lives would be at risk here. So we're going to vote against that as well. So imagine now that this bill is out there, call your member of Congress and demand that they vote for this. Look up your local representative. Find out who's going to vote for this bill. It's the same people that continued to vote for support in keeping American troops in Syria, in an illegal war in Syria, a dirty war in Syria.
Which was never formally declared a war, even though people died. People
Are
risked
dying.
their lives, continue to do so, right? And so if you think about if you're the kind of person who has your child sent into these war zones and they're not formally declared war, it's an insult to the sacrifice that they are risking. And also, they're just, there are many benefits that go into veterans who have worked in active combat zones. And these veterans are not going to get that if it's not formally declared a war by Congress. We may never get a formal war declaration, but we may never end wars either. That's the irony of it. And it's awful.
Yeah. Let us know your thoughts on this in the comments below. Am I crazy about this idea, this theory? I'm just putting it out there. I think that this whole document story is very fishy. The timing of it, the release of it, the kind of quick arrest of a 21-year-old airman, and the fact that they still inside don't know how these documents got out, but they still say that more are coming. They know that more are coming. It's all very, very shady. And all of the documents support less like getting out of Ukraine, but focusing fully on China. It's all plays right into their narrative.
It's not like that kid ran out of there with boxes of paper documents. It was a digital document that he uploaded. They know how much is there. There's no way they don't. It's like maybe he has more, but he's not exactly free to deliver it, is he?
Right. So what's amazing? What's amazing to me too is that a month ago he published them on this Discord server, right? But then no one saw them. A few people saw them. And then it wasn't until then they were then taken and then published on another, someone took it and then I was like, oh, we'll publish it over here. And then it started getting legs. You have to wonder, these little seeds are planted, and who's planting these little seeds and who's making sure that they're growing and watching all of this. Mm-hmm. I just find it all very, very fishy. Thank you so much for watching this segment here at Redacted. We are live every day at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, trying to share the stories that the mainstream media will not cover. You should also come over and join our community of Redacted Rebels over at redacted.inc. That's our private locals community where we can share exclusive content that we simply cannot share here on YouTube. Come over and join the rebellion together right now by going to redacted.inc. We'll see you next time.